John Baker, Director of the Canadian Small Church Ministry Centre, and this is us, Canadian Small Churches in Action podcast, sponsored by Small Church Connections here in Canada. Today, our guest comes from an area that I'm quite familiar with, around the Collingwood, Stayner area of Ontario, and she works and pastors there, but I'm not going to tell her whole story. I'm just going to let her jump in, tell us who you are, what's been your ministry background, your journey as you've gone through, and we'll just get started from there.
Sounds like a good plan.
All right.
So my name is Jane Peck. I used to be Haringa. So I grew up in a Dutch family on a farm. And so we learned to work very hard at whatever we did. That was just what life was like. And I'm the oldest of 4 children and didn't begin life growing up in church. That just wasn't a part of our routine. But my mother, I give her the credit, at the age of 24 with 4 children in tow, decided she needed to do something different with her life and ended up in a small rural church, bringing us along. And so I have grown up in a small rural church. I've worked in very large churches as well, but my beginnings were in small church, which as a child is an awesome experience because you get opportunities to serve that you wouldn't necessarily get in other places. For instance, by the time I was a young teenager, I was helping out with the Midweek Kids Club, just as a worker.
Of course.
I moved from there to being the youth leader, so the youth group leader, and got very involved in our camp ministries. So the first camp I ever got involved with was at Stayner, actually, even though we didn't live right in Stayner, but at the Stayner camp. And so was spent 7 summers there, parts of summers. So I've grown up having opportunities to do lots of ministry, partly because I've been in small churches and everybody needs to pitch in, right? That's kind of how it works.
For sure. Yes.
So then I ended up going to Emmanuel Bible College. So that is our denominational college in Kitchener, and was there for 4 years. And there again, I had opportunities to experience ministry that I might not have had in bigger settings. So I got to be in the choir. I got to be the editor of the newsletter, the news, as well as the yearbook. I was an RA. I got to be student council president. I got a taste of a lot of different things.
Wow, you sure did.
God was just kind of helping me to explore some of the gifts that he's given me and some of the abilities and what passions he had built into me. So that's always been a really good thing. And then after graduating, lots more camp ministries. I've been in camps from Ontario through to BC, various ones throughout the years. And we'll be back at 2 camps this summer. So it's still in my blood.
It's in your blood, I can tell.
It's in my blood. And so I do, but I've worked in children's ministry and group homes and youth ministry and now adult ministry. It's just basically where God opens the doors, I step in and we see what he has for me to learn and how he wants me to serve. So that's just been an awesome privilege that I've had walking through my life. And I'm actually married to a gentleman, Donald, for 28 years now, who he also has been in pastoral ministry and other types of ministry. And so during those 28 years, one of us has generally been on staff at a church while the other one volunteers in whatever capacity that looks like. So we kind of take turns. Right now it's my turn to be on the staff, and but he's still very much a part of what happens here in our setting. And let's see what else as far as an introduction. So we are originally from Ontario. Mm-hmm. We went out to BC and we're in Saskatchewan for about 10 years. We came back, and since then we've again resettled into the Evangelical Missionary Church in 2016 here in Collingwood. And in 2018, I decided I should probably go for ordination. I've been licensed since 93. Mm-hmm. And our denomination in 93 was still struggling with can or can't women, where do we settle on that? But they're now at the place where, yes, women can be ordained. So it's kind of like, I just felt God pushing me like, this is the time to become ordained, because it's never stopped me from ministering,
Right.
not having that. But he also knew that he had plans for me to become the senior pastor. And for that, I need ordination.
Mm-hmm.
So he was setting the pieces in place, and I'm just kind of following along. And so I've been here at Collingwood, and we now aren't called the Collingwood Evangelical Missionary Church. We're called Hope Chapel, which I wasn't responsible for. Somebody else changed it, but it's a very appropriate name for this space here. So that's my story in a nutshell from up to 2020.
All right. Well, you bring up all sorts of very interesting things. I personally, as I said, I have some background in that whole area of Collingwood, Stainer, Duntroon, and yeah, just family things. Let me ask you a question about the area, the context. What do you consider that area to be?
Well, the greater area is still fairly rural.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Collingwood itself, though, is a bit of a retirement hub.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we have tourism that takes place in Wasaga and Blue Mountains, and we're kind of in the middle. And so we have a lot of people who own cottages who come up they're seasonal, so they live seasonally. But oftentimes, once they retire, they want to be here. So Collingwood is an interesting mix between those older folks who like the area, just want to be here, have some money, maybe sold something in Toronto, and so they can pick something up really nice here, and a lot of retail, because of course retail is required for people who are kind of enjoying the end of their life with some money. And so unfortunately, retail is not the kind of business that really helps people garner good financial income.
Right.
And so we have this disparity, growing disparity, I would say, in our area, where you've got some people who have lots of money and people who just don't. And but I think that's fairly common in a lot of places. So unfortunately right now, so primarily rural around, but the actual town of Collingwood, where our church is situated, is you find this very much touristy. Very
Yes,
more touristy.
I
Yes.
would almost call it a resort tour type of area.
A little bit.
Many years ago, actually a shipbuilding area, but
Yes.
has become very, very much from that blue collar type of style of thing to a much more, as you say, resort. I mean, I remember Blue Mountain Pottery. It's beautiful. And of course, that whole retail situation. As you say, it provides a disparity. Now, what does that do? What kind of ministry have you moved into as a church? And I'm going to say this because I already sort of know the answer, but
Right.
but that disparity does mean that you have to find some way to deal with both rich and poor. Well, I'll let you run with some of the things that you as a small church have found.
Right. So for us, so I need to give you a little bit of a background story for our church. So our church will be celebrating 127 years
Oh, wow.
of existence here in Collingwood. So it began with two ladies who started up downtown ministering to those shipyard workers. And it just kind of grown. And our current location, we've been here since 57. And it, but once a church hits a certain year, it can start to plateau.
Right.
And our church, like many churches, was aging and shrinking a little bit in the congregation size, as well as financial ability to do things. So unfortunately, our church 10 years ago had gotten very much stuck in the rut of survival as opposed to serving. And it's just, that's what had happened. And it's very easy to go there, where you just get into survival mode, because you've got to keep going, but for what? You kind of lose sight of what is important. And so the denomination had recommended they shut it down at that point. And some members who were there said, no, we can do this. We want to see this continue, that we have a vision. And so They didn't. It continued, and in 2017, they brought in brought a pastor out of retirement by the name of Tim Harden, and he was part of a Watchman quartet that had been going for, well, they started the year I was born. So I used to have fun teasing Tim a little bit about that fact.
Okay, I think I've heard them. I mean, having
Yes, you
some,
would have heard the
yes,
Watchman quartet if you were
yes,
in Stainer at all.
yes,
So he came out of retirement to minister here during that initial phase of coming back and trying to do new things. But he recognized that oftentimes what was happening is people were trying to do the same things and get different results,
right,
and it doesn't work. And we had conversations about that. And then in spring of 2020, he felt the need to re-retire because he was not doing well physically. And well, didn't that tend to be right when COVID started?
right,
So when COVID started, I took over a lot more of the responsibilities I'd already been doing: the children, the youth, the young adults, the women's, and just added some of the other stuff. So like Zoom and whatnot, where Tim he didn't want to try to wrap his head around that. And I get it.
yep,
So I kind of took over a lot of that. And so when he made the announcement that he told me he was planning to retire, the two of us worked out a plan to propose to the board that they simply allow me to slide into the position. And they were more than happy to let me do that. But at the same time, so we've got a church that, so let me, sorry, back up a little bit.
yeah,
So when Tim was here, there was an issue that took place. Don't need to go into any details,
no,
but
that's
some
fine.
of the people left actually. And at one point we didn't have anybody in our congregation who had been here longer than 4 years, other than one individual. That's it. Everybody else kind of went. But what it did is it allowed for a new freedom to do something new. And so because we can get stuck in churches trying to maintain traditions, trying to maintain legacies, trying to maintain the things that worked in the past, and forget that sometimes those are the past and they're to be the past. So we were able to, during COVID, we had a whole new group and just asked God, what are we to be doing? Just show us how to serve, get out of survival, get into service. Because if we aren't serving, then we shouldn't be bothering trying to be a church, because that's what the church is to be. So first thing we did is we identified the 75 households around us, and every month they received something in their mailbox of encouragement for those COVID months, for the 2 years. Just because, and we called them the Good Neighbor Initiative. Because a lot of the people, because we had got into survival mode, they didn't know us, didn't know that we cared about them, like even if they knew there was a church. So we just started loving on our neighbors. The next thing that took place, we were looking for needs to fill. That was one of them. The second need to fill is we noticed that a lot of people with financial insecurity, it was just growing, the number of people. So we set aside space in our church. We'd already had a little space, but we expanded it. A space in our church called the community cupboard. And in it we have food and clothing, toiletries, household items, cleaning supplies, that sort of things you don't really want to live without, and made them available free to whoever needed them. And so we would have some drop-in times. People would come, no questions asked. If you need it, you can have it. So that was the second thing that we did. The third thing, this church, where its current situation is directly across from a high school. And the students have always been, it's like a magnet pulling them. They want to sit on the steps. They want to sit under the carport. They want, whatever. And so for the last, actually, since the 80s, there has been ministry happening to the students kind of on and off. Sometimes there was a hot dog lunch, sometimes there wasn't, but very sporadic. And so one of the things I challenged our board with was that we either need to be doing something with high school, because it's not an accident that we're straight across from the high school, or we need to get out of the way and let somebody in who will. And so they were all for that. So what we did is, during COVID, when all the restrictions were on, we could have 8 students in. So we set up chairs in our foyer. We had hot chocolate because it was wintertime, and we would have a warming station, and it would rotate around, you know, so they get a little bit of time and everybody had a chance, and we'd build relationships. We also, it wasn't just our church though. It was, I was inviting other church ministers, and we also had our Youth for Christ individual, all working together to try to make sure that there was somebody there, because you always need 2 adults, but just to build relationships with these students. And since then, we've removed the pews from our sanctuary. It's now got couches and chairs and some cafeteria style seating.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, on
Yes.
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we have over 200 students come in for cookies, some Tim Hortons day olds, and some drinks. So either hot chocolate in the winter or iced tea in the summer. And then on Wednesdays, it's a hot dog lunch. And so we have over 300 on those days. And it's all free. So we have these kids coming in on a regular basis, just getting loved on, and they love the place.
I'll bet you they do.
They truly do own it as theirs. And sometimes they know that Jane has to raise her voice at times and that I'm a stickler. But at the same time, I get asked, twice in the last month, will you be my grandma? It's just, so they're not offended, even after I'm having to, you know, kind of crack the whip a little bit. They know they've overstepped, and there's reasons. So, so yeah, so we began the warming station, and now we actually also have, so we have the students coming from CCI, so that's the public high school, but we have our Catholic students over at Our Lady of the Bay making the 10-minute walk commitment to come here and back, and they only have a 40-minute lunch.
Oh, wow.
So when they come, it's kind of like, so we make sure that there's something for everybody. And it's interesting, you know, a lot of people go like, how on earth are you affording all of this? Well, when we committed to serving and not surviving, we sold our parsonage. So we had property beside us, and from those funds, we allocated a certain amount for fixing up our building, the church building, because the money had been so low. They'd been trying to maintain 2 properties, but couldn't do either one justice.
Yes.
So we sold the one, fixed up the building, upped our staffing just a little bit to include like an actual bookkeeper and somebody to do some custodial. But the rest has been used to serve the community. That's where it's gone. And so, yeah, so we knew that we had till this December 2024, that we would be able to, without any income coming in, or that's what we estimated, be able to go till. Well, the ministries grew fast, and well, we never would have imagined 300 kids coming through our doors. Like we can seat 100, and the rest of them take it to go, and sometimes they sit on our picnic tables that we have out front. We've just really made it into a community space, because our goal has been, since 2020, to become a center of community care. That's what we really want to do. And I think God has honored that. And so, but what does that mean for the finances though? So we knew that we were good to December 2024. God has been increasing the money that comes in as the numbers have increased in our ministry stuff, which is good. So the date didn't change. It should have been done a long time ago, but the date didn't change. But we went to the public, we went to the community and said, we need $60,000 to be able to commit to doing this whole thing again for another year, because that's what we're going to be short, is 60,000. And we just announced that at the beginning of May, and we have raised 52,000 up to this point.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's a recognition within the community that it's necessary, but I also think it's God assuring us that we're on the right track.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're on the right track. So.
Wow. So that, okay. There's a few questions that could come out of that. One I'll start with an easy one, and then we'll go to a little more difficult. First question would be, so you have so many youth coming. Is there a funnel, a channel, a way in which those youth then are included in other activities or other things along the way?
Absolutely. So our goal has never been to build a youth group in Hope Chapel. That's not the goal. The goal is that the church community can come. Here's a safe place that students are coming in droves, You come, you serve, you get to know, you chat. We don't talk about Jesus unless students bring them up, and then we talk about Jesus, no
Oh, yeah.
problem at all. But it's kind of like if you went to any Indian food restaurant, you don't want somebody getting up and teaching you about Hinduism if that's not what you signed up for, right? You just want a
Yeah.
meal. So that's what we do. We treat the space like that unless the questions come up, and they do once you build relationship. When you show that you care about them, they're interested in you too. And so we have a number of ways that we kind of get further engagement. So I have pastors coming from, well, I currently have pastors coming from 4 different churches in our local area, and they are building relationships, inviting kids. So anything that happens outside of our lunch program, I call the step 2 or the phase 2. It's kind of like, so first you show them you care. Then you invite them to something else. So, and I've been able to do that here too. So many people are familiar with The Chosen, the
Oh, yes.
TV series. So I actually last year was able to watch seasons 1 to 3 with 10 students, non-Christians who I had built relationships with. And I invited them. I said, I want you to come, would you come and watch a TV series about Jesus with me? And we'll talk stuff from the Bible. Like I put it right out there. This is what it's going to be about. And I had 10 of them come. And did anybody make commitments during that time? No. However, we did have one young man start attending another church. We did through just getting introduced. We had another young man. He came the last day of school last year. He says, Jane, look what I'm wearing. Look what I'm wearing. He shows me, and it's a cross necklace. So he's not a Christian per se, but he's a fan of Jesus.
Mm.
He's walking that way. And so we've also seen like students who get to know some of the other ministers getting involved in youth retreats, getting invited, getting involved. And so it's a growing process. And I think it's a very, very healthy one.
Yeah.
Because the kids don't feel like they're just a number to be chalked up. Oh, look, we got another one. Oh, look, we got it. That's not what this is about. So they feel like they're dealing with friends.
Okay. Now let me jump to another side to this whole project. And that's the partnering and partnerships. How have you been able to, and I think of this as small churches, how do you work up a network, a group, a partnership? What have you done to work that up and work that through?
Right. Well, when it comes to, so our community cupboard, when other churches heard we were doing it, we've had the Anglican Church collect stuff at Christmas time. We had the Reformed Church putting together Christmas baskets so that we could distribute them. We've got other people like bringing in things. Volunteers hear about what's going on. And so sometimes they're non-Christians, sometimes they're Christians, but it's people from the community who care about people. And so we invite them, so it's kind of like, but a lot of it's word of mouth and a lot of what people have heard. Also, we have been very blessed with very good news coverage from the Barrie CTV. When they heard about what we were doing with the lunch program, they came with a camera, did a whole segment, interviewed the students. But we've also our Collingwood Today. It's an online newspaper. Lots of good coverage from the reporters there. And so they've been able to share they shared what we're doing. And then the last time when we needed the community to know we needed that 60,000, I invited one of them and said, could you please run an article? Absolutely. So, so that's part of it. Now, when it comes to our high school lunch program, because it could not run without others. Like we are not big enough to do it on our own. So we've got, I would say probably currently 7 community members who are not church affiliated, who just hear about what we're doing and want to help. Then we have, like I said, the 4 other churches that are regularly committed. So I have one church on Thursday, I have 2 churches on Wednesdays. I have, so we have these different churches coming in. Sometimes there's different volunteers coming. Living Waters Resort. So that's owned by a Christian man, Larry Law, who has been very generous to many of the community nonprofits. And so they actually provide us each year, the last 3 years, with $10,000. and staff on the Wednesdays, but you know
Yeah.
what, they come and they serve and they're a part of it, and they get to see kind of a really cool thing that's happening. It's amazing how many people, when they come in, they're like, this is so amazing. Well, no, that's because God is amazing, and we're following his lead. So yeah, so it's I don't try to make this about Hope Chapel.
Right.
You know, even though, yes, it's our building. Yes, it's been our funding. Yes, I'm here all the time, but it's not about Hope Chapel. It's about the church, the Big C church. And, you know, we want, I mean, how many churches aren't suffering some struggle with the fact that there are no young people in
Mhm.
the churches? Well, how are we going to get them there if they don't know us? You know,
Yeah.
so this is just, I see this as kind of a way to help students experience church in a way that they've never experienced church. Like some of them have no church experience at all. Others have heard things that are negative. And so this just kind of rewrites the picture for them a little bit. It's like Jesus' parable of the sower and the seeds,
Mhm.
where some goes on rocky soil, some goes on, I think we're tilling soil.
Yeah.
We're preparing. The Holy Spirit is using us to prepare hearts to hear about him.
Yeah. So let me delve into the future. Are
Okay.
you already, is the church already thinking of new community involvement efforts? Are there things happening in the community itself that you're saying, wow, this is really exciting?
Well, we've the community. So when we needed our 60,000, I got to do a presentation to a group called 100 Women Who Care, and
Oh,
they pull names, three nonprofits for recommendations from their members. Those three get to do presentations, and then the whole group does a vote on who's going to get the 20,000. They give 20,000 each
mhm.
quarter, and we received it. So so that's straight up community. That's not the church
Right.
necessarily
Yeah.
doing that. I've actually had the owners of the Collingwood Blues just come and chat. How could we maybe be supportive of this? I've had Loblaws. We now get we get a gift certificate from them, and I can use that to buy things for
Oh,
different
great.
things. The Living Water Resort. So one of the things that we need to do future wise is really begin finding those sponsors, because we are a small church. And
Mhm.
so our congregation cannot foot the bill. It just cannot foot the bill for everything that is happening.
Mhm.
The high school lunch program, because of the number of students and what we're serving and all the treats, they're donations. There's not even a cost to those, but it's 55,000 when you
Yeah.
consider everything. And so that's just one thing, but God has got us doing it. And so but it's an easy sell. So when we go to businesses and corporations and whatnot, so that's what we want to build, is this is kind of a base of sponsorship.
Right.
And because there's not too many people in our community who don't at least know one of the high school students.
Yeah. So
So
great opportunity.
we're ministering to their kids.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, our 30 minutes is up, whether
Of course.
whether we like it or not. Uh, but there's one question that I always ask, and this is a
Mhm.
very general question. You can take it wherever you want. If you had one piece of advice for a pastor or leader of a small church, what would that piece of advice be?
Keep your hands open.
Hmm.
Keep your eyes open. Lean into God and let him direct. Too often we kind of get looking at our circumstances and everything and go, we can't do this, we can't do that because of this and that. But God can do amazing things when we seek to do his will and take the time to find out what his will is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just lean into him, follow his leading, and just, and sometimes that means staying the course.
Mhm.
Sometimes that means making changes, and sometimes it actually means putting an end to something that was something from the past, but it is no more.
Yeah.
And that should be okay. We should be okay with that, because God is not stagnant. He changes, he flows, he does things differently sometimes,
Yeah.
all based upon what we need now. So
Mhm.
that's my one.
That is a great piece of advice. Well, thank you very much, Jane, for joining us today.
Thank you, Ron.